our friend Joel Rubin, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State. Now, I actually want to revisit the blast on Russian soil. Ukraine is saying they didn't do it. Of course, Russia is saying they did do it. Now, it's the first attack on Russian soil. So where do we go from here? Do you think it's a false flag operation?
Well, Tabitha, clearly the Ukrainians have no incentive to start attacking Russia. Right now, they're defending their own territory, and they are taking in significant incoming from the Russian forces in this diabolical, unnecessary, unprovoked invasion by Russia. So to start attacking into Russian territory would completely undermine Ukraine's war efforts. But as we know, and as you've described, Russia does enjoy engaging in disinformation to try to break up unity. In this case, amongst Western allies, would be the objective to try desperately to weaken the resolve of the sanctions that are punishing their economy so aggressively right now.
And Joel, we actually even got a report on Friday that peace talks were progressing. When something like this happens, how long does it usually take for both sides to come to some sort of agreement?
Peace talks could be, they could be quick if both sides actually were able to come to an agreement. That means if Russia were to be credible at the table. And that's what's so disheartening about this moment, is that the Ukrainians are coming to the table, they're meeting, and the Russians are implying that they will somehow reduce their encirclement, for example, of Kyiv, that they'll reduce the offensive nature of their attacks, and then they don't. So Russia's not coming to this with an open mind about getting a deal and moving out of this military action. It looks as if they're engaging in these talks to try to probe to see what they can extract from Ukraine without giving up any of their on-the-ground activities or leverage. And so it could be quick if they wanted it to be quick. Clearly, they're stringing this out because they see an advantage in doing so.
I want to ask you about this, too. Jen Psaki said that the United States will provide Ukraine with equipment to protect against potential chemical attacks. Now, they said it was just precautionary, but what are the chances that Russia actually takes this as the United States getting more involved?
Yeah, Tabitha, this is a deep concern. It's something that the national security community has been talking about for some time, which is what happens if there's a stalemate, as we currently see. Right now, between Russia and Ukraine, there's really a back and forth. It's a war of attrition. And so Russia does have the capability, horribly to say this, but to level Ukrainian cities. But what happens if that doesn't even break the Ukrainian resolve? And there is this concern, and Vladimir Putin has hinted at it, using worse weapons, chemical, biological weapons, or within Russia's arsenal. Those could be them. It's prudent for the United States to be supporting Ukraine in this request. It's prudent to be ready for any alternate scenario that could be taken. But it is a deep concern that this could be done to really try to get Ukraine to quit.
Well, we also want to talk about this because there is another country that's definitely helping Ukraine, and that's Australia. They're sending armored vehicles, guns, and more. Now, do you see more countries following suit, considering how long this has progressed?
In many ways, it's conditions based, and it depends upon what the needs are of Ukraine. So they need unmanned aerial vehicles, they need drones. They're getting those from Turkey. They're getting those from other Eastern European countries that have former Soviet Union equipment that Ukrainians can utilize, from Australia, as well, as you point out. And this is part of the design. When the United States, when we engage in multilateral coalitions for military activities, we work with our allies to try to figure out who has what supply to get it into the forces' hands. In this case, European Command is managing that, and multiple countries are at the command, and they're offering up different activities. But yes, this is very multilateral.
So let's talk about China for just a second, because they've been careful not to take sides, but they did take a shot at the United States on Friday, calling the United States culprit and leading instigator of the Ukraine crisis. That's a pretty big quote, adding that NATO should have been disbanded following the breakup of the Soviet Union. Joel, what are your thoughts on China's comments?
Wow, that's looking backward. We might as well just go back 20 or 30 or 40 more years to blame a country not participating in this invasion for the actions of the here and now today. It's complete gaslighting. It's deeply distressing to see that China is picking a side. It's picking Russia's side. And it's also trying to use this as an example to say to the United States that somehow if you get involved in anything, we're going to try to make a moral equivalency out of it. And that's because China understands that we're concerned about Taiwan. We're concerned about China potentially invading Taiwan. They've threatened that in the past. and they're trying to come up with false flag excuses as well. But in 2022, which is where we live right now, it's clear. One country invaded another. Russia invaded Ukraine. Yeah. No matter what has happened in the past, the actions today were decided today in this period, and that's who's responsible, Russia and Vladimir Putin, for this invasion.
And finally, China also pushed back against President Biden in the wish to remove Russia from the G20. What is the future of that group?
Well, it's a bit in disarray, quite frankly, because Vladimir Putin's accepted an invitation to attend in Malaysia. He wants to be there. It's going to cause deep consternation amongst those who don't want him there. And we have these multilateral fora for a reason, and we can't afford to have them fall apart. So this is part of the challenge, is those countries like the United States who stand up for democracy and multilateral cooperation are being challenged by autocracies, by Russia and by China, who are trying to use their dictatorial activities to enforce their vision of the world and enforce it against other countries. And that has the potential to break up multilateral organizations. I don't think it's going to break this one up, but it's certainly going to change the G20's behavior going forward about whether or not and how much to allow autocratic regimes into their activities.
Well, Joel Rubin, as always, we war, but as we just talked